Ma'am, with all due respect, this is a real weapon system, not a jungle gym. Corporal Miller's voice cut sharply through the salty breeze rolling across the historic naval pier. The young Marine stood ramrod straight in his dress blues, chin high, chest puffed, authority radiating from every crease of his uniform. And all of that authority was aimed at one woman, a quiet civilian, standing near the towering 5-inch deck gun mounted forward of the museum submarine USS Stingray. Danielle Boyd didn't even turn her head. Her long blonde hair, tied back in a simple ponytail, fluttered in the ocean wind. She wore a royal blue top, jeans, and old sneakers blending perfectly into the small crowd of corporate visitors touring the submarine. She looked like any other tourist. Maybe quieter, maybe steadier, but otherwise unremarkable, which, unfortunately for Corporal Miller, was the precise miscalculation he was about to regret. "Why don't you head down to the galley with the others?" he added with a dismissive flick of his hand. "They're hearing stories about cooking for 100 sailors in a space the size of a mop closet. Probably more your speed." A few people in the tour group exchanged uncomfortable glances. Danielle still didn't react. Her calm gray eyes slowly traced the breech block, the elevation crank, the brass fittings of the old gun mount, not with curiosity, but with familiarity. Like a mechanic quietly judging the condition of a car engine someone else thought she'd never understand. "I'm fine right here," she said softly, her voice mild, almost gentle. No defensiveness. No bite. But that only irritated the corporal. He strutted closer, adopting the tone of a patient adult dealing with a stubborn toddler. "Look," he exhaled dramatically, pointing at the massive traverse wheel. "This takes 2 strong sailors just to move it a few inches. This thing weighs 50 tons. It's not a toy." Danielle finally met his gaze. No anger, no embarrassment, just stillness, a depth that unsettled him for reasons he couldn't name. Her answer was simple. "I'm aware." That did it. Her calmness, her refusal to be intimidated, felt to him like disrespect. As if she was quietly mocking his authority, his smirk spread. "You know what?" he said loudly, turning to the group. "Let's have a little demonstration." Since this lady seemed so confident, he gestured dramatically at Danielle. "How about we let her try?" Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Corporal Miller was setting up his little show. He expected her to refuse or try and fail, proving his point about who belonged near real weapons and who didn't. "Come on." "Ma'am," he taunted, patting the steel gun mount. "Let's see what you've got." Danielle simply nodded. No theatrics. No hesitation. She stepped past him with the quiet grace of someone who had walked around far more dangerous machines under far more dangerous skies. Her hand hovered briefly over the gun controls. Not out of uncertainty, but from memory. And just for one moment. The museum deck around her disappeared. The salty air turned to scorching dust. The distant chatter of tourists became the deafening echo of artillery. And the silent museum gun faded into a smoking M777 howitzer, still trembling from its last fire mission. "Dragon 6, this is Havoc, Maine. Danger close. Need immediate suppression." Her own voice in the memory was calm, cold, razor sharp. "This is Havoc, Maine. On the way." The vision vanished as quickly as it came. Back on the Stingray, Danielle's hand closed around the traverse wheel. But instead of straining like a civilian trying to impress a soldier, she reached down and disengaged the traverse lock with a clean metallic clank. The crowd jumped. Corporal Miller's eyes widened. He hadn't even mentioned the lock then. Danielle planted her feet in a perfect artillery stance, staggered, balanced, grounded, and she moved the gun, not with brute force, with technique, with muscle memory, with the same smooth, controlled rhythm used by crews who operated weapons that could wipe out entire ridgelines. The 50-ton deck gun groaned, then obeyed. Gasps spread across the pier as the massive barrel swung several degrees to starboard. Danielle shifted to the elevation wheel and began raising the heavy steel barrel toward the sky. Steady, precise, efficient. She didn't look like a tourist. She looked like a gunner, watching from the far end of the deck. ETIRED Chief Petty Officer Thompson, volunteer docent. 30 years Navy, felt his blood run cold. He knew that look. He'd seen it in sailors who operated the great naval cannons of battleships. He'd seen it in Marine artillery officers during wartime deployments. He'd never seen it in a civilian tourist. Hell, he muttered into his coffee. She's not just good, she's trained. Corporal Miller stepped forward, panic rising in his voice. Ma'am, stop. You don't know what you're doing? A snort came from the chief. Oh, she knows exactly what she's doing, son. You're the one who's out of your depth. Danielle returned the gun to a safe angle, re-engaged the locks, and stepped back. The crowd was silent. The corporal's face burned bright red. Humiliation, anger, confusion all twisted together. And in that desperate moment, instead of backing off, he doubled down. Ma'am, he said loudly, you have tampered with a U.S. military artifact? That is a federal offense. I am detaining you until military police arrive. I need to see your identification right now. He had just made the worst mistake of his short career, and at that exact moment, sirens began to wail from the EZ. Shore, black sedans, and a Marine Corps duty van screeched to a halt at the end of the pier. Doors flew open. A command staff poured out with military precision, and at the front of them, a full-bird Marine Corps Colonel Vance. Corporal Miller snapped to attention so fast his spine nearly cracked. Colonel Vance didn't look at him, not once. His eyes were fixed entirely on Danielle when he reached her. He stopped and snapped a salute. Not a casual one. Not a courtesy. A salute filled with reverence. Captain Boyd, Vance said, voice ringing across the deck. It is an honor, ma'am. The world froze. Captain? Captain, ma'am. Corporal Miller stammered, his face turning ghost white. Colonel Vance turned to the stunned civilians. You are in the presence of Captain Danielle Boyd, United States Marine Corps, he announced. Call sign. Ghost eye. Murmurs spread. Cameras came up. Eyes widened. Ghost eye. A name whispered in Marine. Artillery circles like legend. Vance continued. She has saved more Marines than most of us will ever meet. She has directed naval gunfire missions with such precision that destroyer captains requested her by name. She once called a danger-close strike on her own position to break an ambush. That takes courage few possess. Then he looked directly at Corporal Miller. What you did today, he said coldly, is the opposite of what our Corps stands for. You belittled a decorated officer. You acted out of arrogance, not respect. Report to my office at 0800 sharp. The corporal looked ready to collapse. Danielle stepped forward gently. Colonel, she said softly, he was overzealous. That's all. Then she turned to Miller. The standard is the standard. A gun doesn't care about gender. A mission doesn't care about pride. Learn to see competence, not appearances. It was not anger, it was leadership, and it hit him harder than any punishment. Weeks later, in a quiet coffee shop, Corporal Miller approached her again, civilian clothes. Eyes humble, ma'am. Captain Boyd. I came to apologize. Properly, I was wrong. She gestured toward the empty chair. Sit down, Corporal. He explained his reassignment, his new mentorship duties, the training he'd been given. He talked about the lesson she had taught him, one that still echoed in his head every day. Danielle listened and closed her notebook. You made a mistake, she said gently. But it's what you do after that defines you. He nodded, double quotes. Yes, ma'am. I understand now. He stood, offered a small, genuine nod, and walked away carrying the lesson with him. Danielle returned to her coffee, her sketching, her quiet life. A life built on courage, sacrifice, and a legacy most would never know. Heroes don't always wear uniforms, and real power never needs to announce itself sometimes. It just rests quietly in gray eyes that have seen too much. And survived *** story presented by